In Zulu, they say intwe mnandi phindwa. It means that every good thing gets a replay. In the case of MTN Zakhele, it certainly is the case. MTN Zakhele is unwinding in November, and a new scheme to replace MTN Zakhele. They've thought about this hard. They've come up with a new brand. It's MTN Zakhele Futhi. It's not going to create any confusion, one hopes. This is the MoneyMakers. I'm Bruce Whitfield. I'm joined by Sindi Mabaso-Koyana, who's chairperson of MTN Zakhele, and Chris Maroleng, who is spin doctor-in-chief at MTN, or other call him the head of corporate affairs. He's the backstop this evening in case I get too antsy about MTN. We're going to discuss the new share scheme, and it's an important one. I'm getting a lot of emails from people saying, hold on a second, how do I participate? When I refer them to the prospectus, they say, I don't have time to read that. You tell me what to do. I don't know what the answer is. Okay, so let's just look at MTN Zakhele first, if we can, Cindy. If I'd invested the minimum of, say, it was 2,000 Rand in MTN Zakhele on day one, it comes to fruition in November. Let's say it comes to fruition at 120 Rand per ordinary MTN share. What's my 2,000 Rand worth in November at 120 Rand a share?
Well, basically that 2,000 Rand, you would have bought 100 shares at 20 Rand, and today the value of a Zakhele share is around 70 Rand.
So you've gone up 3.5 times.
Definitely.
So the 2,000 Rand is worth 7,000
Exactly.
Rand or thereabouts. Okay, now you go into it again this time with Zakhele Futhi. Why do you stick with Zakhele? Is there not going to be a brand confusion?
Not necessarily. I guess the Futhi stands out, but Chris is the one that.
Okay, go on, Mr. Brand.
Okay.
That's called the hospital pass. That's called the hospital pass.
Yes.
It's been handed to you.
No, I think, Bruce, there's consistency because this has been a transformative agenda, an empowerment prospect that we want to continue in the business. And I think it's worked well in the past, as has been indicated in terms of the return and the dividends that those investors initially had. And I think that affinity is going to carry us over with Zakhele Futhi.
What if the scheme had matured 12 months ago, before the collapse in the MTN share price, before the noise in Nigeria, before the massive fine in Nigeria? What would my 2,000 Rand be worth today?
Well, interestingly enough, Bruce, the Zakhele share had traded at its highest at about 146 Rand.
Okay.
So
the trouble is, this is a bit going into a BE scheme like this is a bit like buying an endowment with a set maturation date. You can do brilliantly for the first 3 quarters of your commitment. The last quarter lets you down and you're stuck in the investment. And that's probably the biggest thing that any investor in any one of these schemes needs to be aware of. You're tied to a time frame.
You are tied to a time frame. An investment scheme, investing is a risk, Bruce. We can never determine at what point of that lifespan will your investment, especially from a share price point of view, collapse and, improve. Because, as you correctly say, the Nigeria matter, no one had predicted it. So someone who would have bought at 20 Rand, sold at 140, by that time we were on the OTC. And so truth of the matter is that now, a few months down the line, it's almost halved. Again.
But that's the reality of investing. But it raises the question in my mind, why tie people in for such a long period of time?
Well, the truth of the matter is that there is also gearing that is linked to the.
So you get a discount, you get an advantage on price, potential upside on it. But you've got to be tied in for the period.
You have to be tied in for a period. I think there are two things. It's more for the investor and also it is for the investee organization, because as Chris says, this is about a commitment of ensuring that we have a transformed economic environment for people who never had the opportunity. So it is instilling the mentality that it is not a quick win kind of scenario. It is a culture-changing, initiative that puts people into the investing culture for a long term. It's not for trading. It is a capital investment with an expectation of a capital appreciation.
But you're vulnerable I mean, you can't react like an ordinary shareholder, Chris. I mean, if on the day that the MTN Nigeria news had broken, I was an ordinary shareholder, I could have cut my losses really quickly, like many people did, waited on the sidelines for the share to hit 120 bucks and bought back in again, in the promise that new management would bring the new broom to sweep clean. Anybody tied into the scheme is tied in for a period of time. Let's move on from...
Yes, you could be tied in for a period of time, but what are you tied into, Bruce? So we're talking about a business that is now looking into previous areas that were in our adjacencies that offer high value and high returns in emerging markets. And what we're saying to these new investors is that
competitive, in an increasingly tired, increasingly penetrated
However,
market.
when we talk at the returns that we're looking at in some of these opportunities, for example, in e-commerce, we're looking at content, we're looking at other parts of the business that talk about mobile money and mobile finance. These are opportunities that typically would not be exposed to the kind of investors that Sindi is talking about. So what MTN is doing is providing a suite of investment opportunities in the digital services. As MTN transforms, increases its value, we also hope that this journey is one where we can carry on with these historically disadvantaged investors.
Why not just issue new shares at a discounted price? Provide the liquidity so that people can make choices. If I choose to stay a shareholder of MTN, if MTN sticks to its side of the bargain, I stay invested forever. I harvest dividends forever. I'm a long-term committed investor. Why don't you have faith in me as an investor to do that?
But this is the beauty about going further and doing a Futhi, because people are being given choices right now. And also, Bruce, when you talk about the tie-in period, it's important for us to understand that the tie-in period is actually 3 years. Because beyond that, you can trade. You must just trade to another black person.
Where is MTN Zakhele Futhi going to be listed? Is it going to be listed on one of the new exchanges?
The first 3 years, because of that tie-in period, it is not going to be listed. It is, yes, an 8-period scheme. However, the first 3 years, you will be restricted altogether. Beyond 3 years, then the share might be listed, but we will provide that tradability after the first 3 years. So basically, if you felt after the Nigeria thing broke, you wanted to trade, at that point, after November 2015, you could have traded your share here at the JSE because it was already listed. So there, the shareholder was given a choice, but an amazing choice, because as Chris says, you were before not able to buy a premium share. The scheme allowed you entry, and now you are able to now be a player in a stock exchange.
What are the T's and C's then in terms of Zakhele Futhi?
Well, basically, for the Zakhele shareholders, what is important is that you need to have at least 50 shares to be able to go into Futhi, and that is basically a minimum of you need a minimum of 2,000 rand.
What's the maximum that can be invested by one individual? If Patrice Motsepe comes in, he fits the profile of a Zakhele Futhi shareholder, but he can buy them all.
Well, he is a black person, so he qualifies whether as an individual or he comes with his grouping that has to be 100% black owned, by the way. However, what is important is that people can come in and register for whatever amount they would like to register.
And if you're oversubscribed, then you'll get divided into proportions.
Yes, and there's a scaling principle, which basically would like to prioritize those that have come from the Zakhele, scheme. And also, this is also targeted predominantly, to people who would have naturally not be able to invest.
However, Chris Maroleng, is this true empowerment in the sense of empowerment? If I've got 2,000 Rand, which I can scrape together, sure, I may in 8 years' time get myself 7,000 Rand. But if I'm somebody working in a middle management, senior management level, I'm earning 100,000 Rand a month, and I've been saving in anticipation of this, and I've got 300,000 bucks. I'm going to be pretty rich by the time this thing matures, in theory. I'm already privileged as somebody with good income. Why do I get the same access as somebody who scrapes together just $2,000?
Because, Bruce, Zakhele Futhi is part of a broad piece of empowerment and transformation at MTN. So the current special purpose empowerment vehicle that we're talking about now targets the empowerment of people who would want exposure to, such securities. But on the other hand, we have other ways in which we empower and transform through MTN. One of them is through our employment equity.
Aren't you just adding privilege on top of privilege for people who've already got money?
Not at all. We're not, because what we're basically saying is that when you look at the total ownership in the economy, what we actually anticipate is that this should have a flow through of about 30% of black ownership in MTN South Africa, which basically says that we are changing the fundamental complexion of ownership in MTN. We are providing
the percentage of black shareholders in MTN as we speak right now? I mean, however that is classified, I appreciate it's massively complex.
I think I couldn't give you that exact breakdown now.
Is it 20%?
What I can,
is it 20% plus?
I wouldn't want to.
But you say it's going to. But you claim it's going to lead to flow through.
It will.
But you can't tell me what effect MTN Zakhele has had.
What the current situation is at this stage. But what we can say is from the 4% of MTN Group that is going to be bought up by Zakhele, this will deliver a flow through of about more than 30% in MTN South Africa. And this is the actual demographic that we're focusing on, the historically disadvantaged people. So we're not looking at their current position, Bruce, and saying that you may have a disposable or discretionary income that you can invest in these shares. We're looking at your previous position that did not and excluded you from the mainstream of the economy. This vehicle begins to address that historical disparity.
Is it a bit like Groundhog Day? I mean, is Zakhele, if so people understood Zakhele Futhi is essentially the same thing, just looking forward. What are the big differences?
You know what, there's very few differences. Zakhele had a discount of just about 20%. Futhi has got the similar discount. MTN in Futhi is putting almost 5 billion rand in it, which just under 2 is that discount, and about 3 billion is the vendor financing. They had done similarly, even in Zakhele, which is actually double what funders put into the scheme. So the structure is, the capital structure is basically the same.
Thank you both for coming in. Nice to see you both. Sindi Mabaso-Koyana, Chairperson of MTN Zakhele, and Chris Maroleng, Executive of MTN Group Corporate Affairs, taking you through some of the detail of the new MTN Empowerment Scheme. You more than tripled your money on the last scheme if you were part of it. Could have been better if they hadn't run into the trouble in Nigeria. Hopefully, under new management, MTN finds this as a base from which to build, and within the next 8 years, you make some real money. Thank you for watching the Moneymakers this evening. Have yourselves a very good night. Bye-bye.